welcome to Reelin Films. I do hope that you enjoy this video. Don't forget, if you have not yet subscribed to our channel, hit that like button, subscribe, and hit that bell. Like that you guys can get notified for anything and everything movie and series related here at Reel in Films. I hope you enjoy this video. Good afternoon. How are you doing today?
John, what's up, buddy? Have we got 30 minutes? That's a lot of time. That's a lot of talking.
It is. But the good thing is that we're gonna have this great conversation about your upcoming film Sunrise. So, just starting off the bat, what inspired you to make this film uh be available for everybody?
Well, it was presented to me just after I'd finished One Way, or I was finishing One Way, my last movie, and it had gone through various incarnations with other filmmakers and actors, and for whatever reason, it didn't get made, and I really liked working with Martin Brennan, my producing partner, and who's done my other movies as well. And then my manager Jib also came on board this, which is great. Who's produced the other movies as well, and it came from an EP. Our producer Mark Huffin. It was his baby for a long time, and Mark was instrumental in getting Zone 414, my first movie, made. He was instrumental in connecting us with Guy and Travis Fimmel. So he'd worked with them both before on other projects. So it was that was the initial. It had traction. I really appreciated what Mark had done. You know, he was revered in his field. You know, he works with Ridley Scott, and so that was the initial thing. And then I read the script, and I was like, okay, I can see the initial references were like Near Dark or The Crow or something like that. I'm like, The Crow was one of my favorite movies. I remember when that was such a great movie. But then it veered away from that. And it became more like a straight contemporary Western human drama. I love the I liked the character's journey, the arc of Fallon, this guy that's kind of plagued with this illness, and he's got, you know, it's like an addiction. The vampirism is an addiction, and it comes from him going through some great trauma. So from this great trauma that he suffered, he developed this addiction, and he has to overcome it, you know, and that involves surrendering his kind of hatred and resentment towards this really toxic family, namely Joe Reynolds, who murdered his wife. And you know, the Reynolds family is just a human manifestation of a monster, of fear. You know, it's a human. It's here. It's really, the Reynolds clan are like fear in human form, and they kind of rule this town with like this little town with like an iron fist, you know, and they're puritanical, God fearing, you know, whatever that's what it is. That the excuse is like they can carry out and do whatever they want to protect their land in the name of God, but it's really just out of fear, you know. So, and this man Fallon then has to go on this journey to this. He's put into this purgatory, and he's got to like find sort of salvation. You know, he's got to find he's got to find a kind of he's got to come to terms with himself, the situation he's in, his loss, his pain, and kind of like rise above this sort of this horrible toxic world that that the Reynolds family have created in this town. So that's the way I approached it. You know, it really never was a case of vampires jumping around like superheroes and fighting each other and any of that action set pieces. You know, it wasn't Blade or anything like that, you know, which I liked when I saw it back in the day. It became a much more, I suppose, in a way, it was a bit more of an art house approach to the vampire movie, you know. So that's kind of, and it was like it had great characters, you know, which is always what draws me to anything, is the characters and what you can do with them, who you can cast, you know. So that's it.
Okay. And being the fact that you got to read the script, and while you were filming Sunrise, did you get to work with Ronan, the writer, just in, you know, like in a case that you felt that a certain scene should have a different feel? Was it easy to work with him in this case?
Yeah, Ronan had written the script a long time ago and had gone through so many different drafts and directors and actors and things that I think he was like, you know, he was he was just happy that it was getting made, you know. And so what happened was, once I got Guy and Alex on, we went into the script, you know, and because I had some issues, and Ronan did a pass, and then I did a couple more passes, and we're getting closer to production to resolve a few things, you know, because there was a lot of different story threads, and there was a lot going on with politics, the racism, you know. It was like a horror movie, thriller, family drama. There's a lot of different things going on. So it took some time to really kind of break it down and create like a singular tone, you know, that worked for everything, you know. So I worked with Ronan to some degree on that. I worked with the actors to a larger degree on that, you know. Then there was practical considerations, you know, where we didn't have the budget for big pyrotechnics, nor did I want them. So it was like I was forced to like make the human drama work, you know, because I didn't have the resources to resort to pyrotechnics, which it doesn't work anyway unless there's a like an authentic requirement for them when the characters are in a certain situation or whatever. So so does that explain your question?
Yes.
Yeah.
So now, Andrew, wanted to ask, at the beginning of the film, there is like a certain folklore explained, and
Yeah.
was that something that you wanted to implement in the film, like that people can just think that this is something supernatural, and then when they go ahead and watch the whole film, it's something totally different, like just to gain their engagement or their interest?
Well, it took a while for us to like really kind of condense down what this red coat was and what it represented in the film. And really what it is just a metaphor for fear, you know? And it's like an urban or rural legend that you'd find in any small town around the world, you know, small community. So but initially that was the threat in the town. That's what you're introducing the audience to, that this town is surrounded by this threat of the red coat. And the red coat is the fear, but really the fear generates from within. You know, they think it's some sort of external, but it's from within. So the Reynolds family, who are very puritanical and like hard-nosed religious family, they live in a fear, but the fear is self-generated. It's an internal fear that they've generated within themselves. It's not an external thing at all. So the red coat is just a metaphor. It's like it's just a visual metaphor of like when it's like a disease. All right, so it's like when the fear is at a maximum, you can be infected by it to such a degree that it takes you over, and that's what happened to Fallon, that he got infected by this disease, and through great trauma, and he has to go through a process of recovery from it, you know, because it's keeping him in this purgatory. Whereas the Reynolds family, they live in it, you know, they are nourished by this toxic kind of energy, and until it gets to a point where they're you know, like both Reynolds and his mom and the gang, they all succumb in the end to this fear, you know, this poison that they've created themselves in this town. So which ends up in this cleansing at the end. It's like a cathartic sort of cleansing. So it's like in the end, like fear doesn't survive. It dies, you know, with the light, you know, with the healing, you know. So so that's basically what kind of happens in this movie. There's a catharsis in the end.
Okay. Were there any challenges while filming? You did mention in regards to the resources, in regard like that you could do the pyrotechnics, but were there any other challenges?
Well, we shot the movie in Northern Ireland, but it's set in the Pacific Northwest. So we had to, I think we pulled that off to a large extent. But I also wanted to keep certain elements of Northern Ireland and that region and the history, because it was the origin of the story, and it was the origin of the tone. This very violent, dark tone, which originated from that region back in the times of the Troubles. So the script, I think, was written shortly after the peace process, and it was maybe the writer, I talked to him briefly about it, but I think it's kind of I think it was kind of a result of those experiences to some degree, growing up with that kind of in that world. But again, you can transpose this story anywhere in the world, like a little town in the US, and you can have like the same level of racism and hatred and religious ideologies or whatever. So that's what we did to just make it a bit more universal. It was very much like a Western. So I just wanted it had gotten moved to the US before I came on board, and I preferred that version, but it just made it more universal. And that's what we want to do, is we want to tell universal stories, because sometimes it's more often than not, when you have to go and finance these movies and cast them, you know, there's a practical consideration that like this is a movie for the whole world, and it gets sold throughout the world. So if you make it too provincial and too area specific, you know, you can damage its ability to be made. So that's why the United States is you know, it's like movies that are set in the US travel the best, you know, because they're American movies like travel the best and sell the best, pretty much. So we but again, this is my third movie. I'm a start my fourth movie, but so 3 out of the 4 haven't been shot in the US. It's only my second movie was shot in Georgia, just outside of Atlanta. So it's like I'm making American movies, but they're set in sorry, what is it? Yeah, I mean, they're not all necessarily set in America, but they're set in these genre worlds that are American, you know, they have an American feel. And the challenge is always like, can you do this in another part of the world? And yeah, you can if you're smart and you're careful. And I think we did well. I think we did really well with Sunrise. I think we've captured a very distinctive atmospheric any town, any place, anytime America. Do you agree?
Yeah, yeah.
How did it come across to you?
Can you repeat that question again?
Well, what did you think? Did you get immersed in this world?
Yeah, I did. I did. The thing is that I am very intrigued in like when it comes to like have that's why my initial question of like the folklore came in due to the fact that you're bringing a type of like mythical story, and then when you watch the film it's not mainly focused on that mythical story. It's focused on another type of feeling. It's focused on the characters and on the development of those characters throughout the film. Because I have a I understand that it's way more interesting that even though if you bring something mythical or some type of folklore from any type of place, if your story is focused on the characters and what's going on in their little town or in their mind, it brings more essence to the film because you're building the characters with the audience as well. Because when you mix a lot of like at least this is my point of view, when you mix a lot of fiction with a real life story, it loses that essence of like what's going on in the surroundings with your characters. That's why I asked about the folklore, because when you do finish the film, you do notice so many things about around these characters, and the idea that the red coat is just like a metaphor. Like, let's say for instance, here in Puerto Rico, we have a lot of like folklore of different creatures or spirits or demons or whatnot, but there's never any evidence that they exist. But when you go to these small towns here in our island, that folklore exists, and a lot of people have fear about them, and it's very interesting. That's why Sunrise caught my attention from the beginning till the end.
Good. Yeah. Yeah, it's like a little rural myth. But again, as I said, it was very much created. To be honest, the red coat was really fleshed out in the edit. It was really fleshed out in the edit. At one point, I'd reserved, like, we were going to go and shoot. We had an actor lined up, you know, we were going to shoot an extra day of redcoat stuff, and then I figured out I didn't need it, but I didn't know at the time. So it very much, that character of the redcoat was crafted in the editorial, the relevance, how it fitted into the story, why it was there, you know. But and I don't mean this to come across as some like, oh God, it was a total mess, or, but because that's the way I like to work, you know, make it experiment like that. I knew that what we were doing was enough. That's why I shot, and you saw what you saw of the red coat. But it wasn't quite clear. I knew that it would work out. I feel that, but it was like I wasn't quite sure how relevant it would be in the story or when. But that's filmmaking, you know. It's like this whole idea for me of like, you know, you write a script, it's there, you just shoot the script, that's all you do, you put it together, blah 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 blah. It never works like that with me. It's like it's a much more organic kind of experimental process, you know. I mean, you need, for me, you need the characters, because audiences follow characters. Those characters come from a world or a story or an idea. So the idea comes after character. The character should generate the idea. Like the next movie I'm doing, it's a survival movie, but it's about a dysfunctional family that find themselves in an extraordinary situation. They got to band together and survive. And I just like that. You know, I like those characters, and that's what that presents. The genre that it's set in and all of that is secondary, because it's about those characters. So um and then the I just like the idea then of this town with these characters being haunted by this mythology or this ideology, but really it's not no different than like the puritanical religious types. They're haunted by this ideology. You know, it's an ideology, it's not a reality, it's an ideology, and it creates this fear and this dread, and which then has people like do these horrendous things to each other to protect themselves from this whatever manifestation of one's mind. You know, it's all like, you know, the stuff that people do, what we can do to each other, just from, it's really just out of fear.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what these, I think what it is, these mythologies, right? And these urban myths or legends or whatever, like you said, in Puerto Rico or whatever, it's a way for people to take their trauma and their fears and project them into this kind of mythical, fantastical kind of thing. So it puts it out there away from them, you know. It's just, I think it's a way for people to just deal with trauma. And it's like, as long as it's out there, it's not within us, you know.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we keep it out there in the woods, don't go into the woods, we're going to be okay. But it just doesn't work like that, you know. It doesn't work like that. It's like compartmentalizing human nature. It's like, oh, I just want to take this trauma and this fear, and rather than to heal from it and deal with it, I just want to like I want to put it into a little fake box, and like a bottle, like a little message in a bottle, and send it off, and it just goes away. And it doesn't work like that, you know, because it always comes back. And I think that's the thing, you know. The Reynolds family realized that this internal fear that they live on, they're like cockroaches, they just live on disease and like toxic energy and fear. In the end, they got to deal with it, you know. They got to deal with it. They don't get to just like crush and control, and you know, they got to deal with it. The same, but Fallon, who suffered this great trauma, like has, you know, we find him in this purgatory, and you know, he just has to, like, it's through the family, the Loy family, that he can see that there's a life there. He gets reminded of the love and the light, you know, and he gets brought back into the light through the love of this family, you know. And that's what we all need. Like, we all need love in our lives, like, to heal. That's what love heals, you know. And you know, he had that initial great love taken from him, so he fell into this like purgatory, and it takes another love, and it was the love of the family, for him to heal from that.
Okay. And wanted to ask Andrew, how was it working with Alex and Guy?
Fantastic. I mean, they're just, both of them are real pros. I mean, Guy's one of the best out there. Alex is such a talent. He's so confident, and we're going to do more work together for sure. He's just a great find for me, and then the way they work together and the way the three of us work together, it was just a high point in the movie. It was just great. It's from both the creative but also practical. I just love working with these actors. Movies are made by really good actors playing really good characters.
Okay. And is there any future that you would like to make a film that has somewhat of the same feeling as Sunrise?
I don't think so. I think that's the thing. It's like I don't seem to want to repeat. Um, Sunrise is essentially, if you want to call it a horror movie. My previous movie was a crime movie. And the movie before that was a science fiction movie. And the next movie is a survival movie. And the movie after that is a spy movie. So I don't seem to have a desire to repeat. I was offered a science fiction movie a couple of months ago. And I just was like, the only draw is building another world, but the characters aren't good. And if you don't have good characters, you're not gonna cast. And if you can't cast, then you're not gonna make the movie. You're not gonna make a good movie. So it's really the characters, and then the desire to create a similar world again. I've no interest in recreating. They're all these first three movies I've done, and the next movie, totally different world as well. It's like, yeah, I don't. It's a good question, because this other science fiction movie I was offered was just like, it would have just been to some degree recreating what I did with Zone, and I have no interest in doing that. Maybe if it was like, on a much bigger level, a much bigger budget, and okay, but this was like, bigger but not that much bigger. And I was like, no, I'm just. But the other thing that draws me is the locations, the movies. That science fiction was going to be done in Georgia, in the Republic of Georgia, whatever, Tbilisi. So that's interesting. And my first movie was going to be done in Belgrade, and the next movie's been done in Cape Town. So these different parts of the world that you can go to, that is of great interest to me. And
Okay.
then, yeah, because I mean, if somebody said, "Oh, I want you to go to New Orleans and do the next movie," I'm like, I've already been there, done that. So if you want to go to Cairo, you want to go to Istanbul, which that's much more interesting to me. I think for me, it's finding a real location in a foreign country that suits the story, that you can then retrofit the story onto the real location. Okay, so which is what we did with Sunrise. Even though we
Mm-hmm.
shot it in Northern Ireland and it's set in the US, it still has the flavor of Northern Ireland, but mixed with the US. That was very interesting. Creating the world of Sunrise was very interesting to me, as was Zone. And then the movie I did previous, One Way, I mean, most of it was set in a bus, so there's not a lot of world building there. You're just trying to you're trying to make a movie on a bus and make it real and engaging. So that was tricky, but we pulled it off. So does that
Okay.
answer your question? Yeah, no
Yeah,
desire to
it does. So, Andrew, this would be my final question. If you could describe Sunrise with one word, what would it be?
hope.
Hope. Yeah, I like that. I like that word. So, Andrew, I want to thank you for giving us the time to talk about Sunrise and as well your career. And I hope that everybody, when they get to see the film, they fully enjoy it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, buddy. Pleasure talking to you, John.
Same here. Bye bye.